Dr. Juan Andrade is a true and genuine hero in our community. His advocacy for Hispanics for decades, his dedication to education, unwavering civic commitment make him an extraordinary leader. Dr. Andrade is the president of the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, USHLI, and he carries an impressive career journey with 5 degrees, 5 honorary doctorates, and it's only the 4th Latino in history to be honored by both presidents of the US and Mexico. Yes, woo! Not only we can call him el padre, el jefe de la comunidad, but I also couldn't do justice to this introduction without sharing a personal note of gratitude. During a challenging time where I personally felt the impact of fragmentation of our community to me and to us as an organization, which we all have had, isn't it? Because we were not as united as we are. We're not calling each other as we are now. Dr. Andrade stood up with me. Dr. Andrade stood up with me and with the World Human Foundation day by day. His mentorship taught me the impact of being united as a community. We should never underestimate the power of standing by each other, being resilient even in the vulnerable moments. It is with immense respect and gratitude that I present to you my mentor, my role model, Dr. Juan Andrade.
I'll do this first.
I think that after.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe after?
Okay. Hello? You wouldn't believe how nervous I am right now. How many times I've done this over my 53-year career. And yet, and I have followed some of the real giants in public service to have to speak after people like Ted Kennedy, Jesse Jackson, these kind of people, and stand here before you today I also had an opportunity. I was the only Hispanic invited to address an audience of 300,000 people at one time. And there was no seating for anyone, so it was an easy way of getting a standing ovation. But when you see the football games and they say there's 100,000 people here, and you see the mass of people, like at the University of Michigan where they have this huge stadium, and just imagine a crowd 3 times that size as far as the eye can see. And today I am more nervous than I was at that time. But where's my clock? Oh, God. I debated for months. Oh. I better take a swig now. Yeah, it's water. But I debated for months what I should say to y'all today. Should I talk Latinos up like we heard yesterday? And frankly, I'm going to be 77 years old. And I have never been more proud. I've never been more proud of who and what we Latinos have become than I am today. What we saw yesterday was so uplifting, so inspiring, that it just energized even this old man. And I can imagine how the rest of y'all felt, young as you are. But I mean, after what I saw and heard yesterday, whoever is not excited and pumped about our future probably doesn't have a pulse. We're not where we want to be yet. but we have arrived. La raza ha llegado. El pueblo se siente. El pueblo hispano está presente. And the country is becoming more and more aware of that every day. And Claudia Edelman, Romo Edelman is here to remind this country every day that we have arrived, that we are here. Please give Claudia and her team a round of applause. For over a century, socially, culturally, economically, and politically, we were treading water for a better part of 100 years, but we definitely turned the corner 20 years ago. Anyone who isn't betting on Latinos to take this country and our community to the pinnacles of power in every aspect of society is just a damn fool in denial. 40 years ago, our population was just under 15 million. Today, it's nearly 65 million. And they call us the sleeping giant. If you ask me, Latinos are not getting enough sleep. 40 years ago, when anybody talked about Latino economics, it was usually in the terms of poverty. Today, our GDP exceeds $3 trillion a year, the fifth largest in the world, as we were told several times yesterday. 40 years ago, the Latino Congressional Caucus could meet in a phone booth. Today, we're 10% of the United States House of Representatives. 40 years ago, less than 3 million Latinos were registered to vote. In 2024, an estimated 23 million Latinos will be registered to vote, and 20 million will vote in the 2024 election. I hope that includes every citizen of voting age in this auditorium today. In 2020, our voter turnout was the largest, the highest in history. The country overall surpassed all records. We're over nearly 260 million people. 150 million people voted in that election. That was a 15% increase in voter turnout throughout the country. But among Latinos, our turnout was over 31% higher than in 2016. That is who we are. And that is our mantra. We have to be twice as good as everybody, and we have to do twice as much as everyone. And we're stepping up to the plate. The call is ahead of us, and we will answer that call. Or I wondered, should I talk about what is really a great concern of mine after what happened after the last presidential election? And I hope that you will indulge me these remaining few minutes. Wow. I saw the clock. But I have decided to do the latter. We're going to talk about a little bit about my history. I've never spoken about this in public before. But because of all the progress that we have made as a community and what the future holds for us that we got so excited about yesterday, let me tell you, with my 53 years experience in this field, that future that we applauded yesterday is in jeopardy. It is in jeopardy. We could lose it all. There are so many things that we could lose. Health care, affirmative action, native birth citizenship. Do y'all know what native birth citizenship is? That means that all the children in America born to non-citizens will have their citizenship revoked. That is what is on the table today and in the election for next year. We stand, can you imagine how many young people that means that will no longer be citizens of the United States? I've spent 53 years of my life trying to empower our community by promoting education, civil rights, immigration reform, and leadership development, and helping democratize 10 countries in the Western Hemisphere. I was going to tell you when I was arrested the first time, but I'll skip that. But it wasn't the last time. More recently, I was arrested in Chicago for joining other leaders in blocking the entrance to a federal building because that's where they were taking undocumented workers to be deported. And we sat there and blocked the doorway so they couldn't go in until they arrested us. I was in Nicaragua, and I was stopped by Sandinistas who were armed with weapons aimed at me, telling me to get out of the car, out of the van in which I was riding, because they knew I was there to help defeat a dictator president. We did, and we elected the first Latina, the first Hispanic woman president in the Western Hemisphere. It was worth it. I was detained in Panama by the Panamanian Defense Forces, who confiscated my passport, my driver's license, my airline documents at the airport when they escorted me off the plane. And they put me on the next flight out of their country. I was asked to go back because the people were organizing a boycott of the election because they understood that the dictator president was going to steal the election. And they asked me to come back and tell them that they have to vote, because if they don't vote, if they boycott the election, the dictator president does not even have to steal the election. We'll give it to him. What we have to do democratically is force him to steal the election so the whole world can see how he got elected. And I told them that the condemnation of the free world would come down on him and condemn him for stealing that election. Well, the military came in on election day and beat up a lot of people. Some of the people that I had met with, I saw on television being brutally beaten up. But they turned out to vote. And sure enough, he stole the election. And months later, a U.S. Airborne Division of paratroopers landed in Panama City, arrested him, and put him in a prison in Florida. It was worth the effort. I went to Haiti to help get out the vote. The last presidential election had been a bloodbath when people were shot, stabbed, and attacked with machetes. So people were obviously afraid of more violence. And there has been more violence since. But it's worth the effort. In the last election, it was the president himself that was shot. I was asked to go to other countries where democracy has not taken root because of my commitment to democracy was well known. I went to these countries because I knew they admired and envied American democracy. I was glad to tell them how democracy works in America: the popular vote, the electoral college, the certification of elections, and the peaceful transfer of power. they were particularly amazed and amused at the idea of a peaceful transfer of power, because in their countries, a coup d'etat was more likely to happen. I explained that in a democracy, we just throw the rascals out at the end of their term if we don't like them. In a democracy, we don't use the military to solve political differences. I was proud to present and represent American democracy, and it saddens me to see us drifting closer and closer to having the kind of elections that I risked my life time after time trying to avoid. In 2024, we're going to have another presidential election. And that election in that year will be a year in your life unlike any you've had before or will ever have again. Everything is at stake. Everything is on the table, because the government that will govern over you and our community and our future will be decided. Don't just take it from me. Prominent leaders in this country have said that the 2024 presidential election will be the last presidential election elected and decided by ballots. Future elections after 2024 will be decided by bullets. They have said that on radio. You can hear it broadcast all over the country and all over the world. My friends, take it seriously. We can't let that happen. Not in this country. We stand to lose it all. And for myself, my life is almost over. I nearly died 5 years ago, so I'm living on borrowed time. If the first Latina Surgeon General of the United States, the first Hispanic Surgeon General of the United States, and a Latino director of transplant surgery in Chicago had not worked to save my life, I would have died. I didn't survive for nothing. And I feel that if I have one more fight left in my life, it'll be next year. It'll be next year to save democracy, because democracy must be preserved and our future is at stake. Some people may work to steal the election next year, but we can't stand by and let anybody steal our future. Our future is too bright. America needs our future to be fulfilled so we can do for this country and the world what we have been blessed to have today, that we celebrated yesterday with all the data that was shared. That is our future, and we must save it, and we can save it next year. We have to. Trust me. Democracy and Latino prosperity are two sides of the same coin. We can't have one without the other. We have to vote not only to save democracy, not just for ourselves, but to save democracy for the world and those who look up to the United States. But we have to save our future. In the final analysis, let it show that Latinos turned out to vote in record numbers, the largest number of votes in history. Because whether or not we vote, we will impact the election. When you're dissatisfied with one candidate or both candidates or all of them and decide not to vote, you are impacting the election. So don't kid yourself. Either sit it out and impact it negatively, or turn out to vote and impact it positively. Because in the final analysis, someone is going to get credit for the results, and somebody is going to be blamed. Please make sure that it is not our community that will be blamed for the results. That when the election is analyzed, all of them will agree across the board that Latinos did their part. Latinos turned out to vote in record numbers and impacted the election. Let me end with a call to action. Mis hermanos y hermanas, defiendan lo tuyo. Defiende lo tuyo. Let's rise up as a community and raise our voices for the whole world to hear. Our voices from coast to coast, from New York to California, everything in between. Rise up and raise our voices in that election. Defiende lo tuyo. Defiende tu pueblo. Defiende el futuro que merecemos. ¡Que viva la raza! ¡Que viva la raza unida! Thank you very much. My father died when I was 13 years old. And one of the things he told me, he said, "Mijo, if you want to be seen, you got to stand up. If you want to be heard, you got to speak up. But if you really want to be appreciated, you need to know when to sit down." It is that time for me to sit down. But before that, indulge me the pleasure of introducing a great friend, ally, mentor, who has reached the highest levels one can reach in a career. But I learned from Frank Gomez that it is not how high you climb that measures your success. Your success is measured by how wide you reach. It's just like Claudia. This is her success, not by reaching high, but by reaching wide and bringing us all together. Frank reached the highest levels in government, reached high levels in corporate America. And that was good enough for most people, but not for Frank. Because his idea for his legacy was that Frank reached wide and brought others into the fold. He was one of the founders of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda. He helped found the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. This had nothing to do with his job. This was just his life. This is what he wanted to do, to reach wide. Young people, do not be bogged down by how high you climb. Reach wide in your career. And trust me, if you reach wide enough, the height will take care of itself. At our national conference, which will be in February of 2024, the largest Latino leadership conference in the nation. This will be our 42nd year, held exclusively in the city of Chicago. We were going to present this award to Frank Gomez, a Lifetime Achievement Award, named after Hank Lacayo, the founder and co-founder of our organization in Chicago. But Frank's wife stumbled here on a sidewalk as they were coming home from dinner and hurt herself so badly that Frank had to cancel his plans to attend the conference to receive this award. And he told me a month ago that because of his own health, he probably wouldn't be able to join us in February of 24. So I asked Claudia if she would let us present this award to him, and she agreed. That's how wide Claudia can reach. And Frank is here this morning to accept our Lifetime Achievement Award presented to Francis D. Gomez in memory of Hank Lacayo, the co-founder of our organization in Chicago. Frank?
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, everyone. I saw that slide up there when they were presenting the data, and it said, "We are young." How about that? We are young. And it's true. We are young in spirit, for sure. Time is short, so I'll be short. One of my favorite quotes about brevity comes from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said, "Be succinct, be sincere, be seated." Thank you.